Good morning, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Symposium, episode 2. Let's cut that music. How is everybody doing today? I am your host, Christian from Board, back at it again with episode 2 of the Symposium. And you probably won't be able to tell too much by the title because I'm trying to keep them somewhat vague. Today, we are going to be talking about budgeting in the board game hobby and how to save yourself some moolah. But before we get into the main topic of today's episode, we have to cover, of course, the game of the week, baby. It is that time once again, and this week we're back at it with another crowdfunding feature, but this one does already exist out in the wild with some physical copies in high demand. For episode 2 of the Symposium, our game of the week is actually a double feature, primarily being the Old King's Crown, the second printing, as well as Annulet, the new game that's coming alongside the Old King's Crown second campaign. So the reason that this is coming up this episode is because as of this morning, this is May 26th that this is being recorded, as just a little way to date this episode because I do record these in advance to make life a little bit easier on myself. As of recording this episode this morning, I just got an email about the latest update for the Old King's Crown second printing, which, yes, I did back, that all of the copies of Old King's Crown are now at fulfillment centers and being prepped to ship. So within the next few weeks, I should hopefully be seeing my copy of the Old King's Crown. Now, this is not including the expansion or the new game that we're going to be talking about today alongside it. It is literally just the base game of the Old King's Crown and nothing else. They just wanted to get a speedy reprint out there for people that missed the first campaign because there was a huge demand for this game after, I think it was the No Pun Included video came out, and then everyone else started making content on it, and this game has been on everyone's radar. Now, it's been a little bit quieter as of late because this campaign has already ended. However, the late pledge is open over on GameFound if you are interested in it and you have been looking for it. Again, just like at last episode, I am not sponsored or affiliated in any way with Eerie Idle Games, the publisher and designer for the Old King's Crown. I have no relation to them whatsoever. This is simply just a guy geeking out and talking about a game for, well, about 15 minutes roughly. So what is the Old King's Crown? For those of you that are not familiar, maybe haven't been too much in the social spaces for board gaming or just don't really pay attention to new releases, totally fine. The Old King's Crown essentially boils down to a heavy lane battler. And that may not sound too exciting for people that have played stuff like Air, Land, and Sea, or oh shoot, what's the other game that I've played that I'm now blanking on? There's tons of different lane battlers. You're just fighting over different arenas using cards with strengths. Usually there's effects that will like modify things and change how they interact with the board, or well, with the lanes, quote unquote. Gosh, what is the game I'm thinking of? So Critters at War, there we go. Critters at War is one of them, or I guess just Air, Land, and Sea in general. And the other one is Compile. There we go. Compile was the one I was trying to think of. Usually they're pretty simple, small card games where you'll have like smaller decks of cards. Players will get random ones. They'll have values and effects that will change up the arena and how things happen as you're trying to just have a bigger total in each lane than your opponent to try to win those quote unquote theaters and just take over the game that way. Now, Old King's Crown is a little bit different. So the whole theme of this is that the Old King has gone missing, and now all of these factions are vying over control of the kingdom to claim the crown for themselves. And players will be taking on these factions, which do have asymmetric abilities, and everyone's going to have their own deck of cards. It's going to start off fairly simple, but has ways to unlock and add more cards to it as you go. And I believe the game is played over 4 or 5 rounds typically, but it can also end earlier if a certain threshold is met. And in typical lane battling fashion, that you are going to be playing cards with values and effects to different theaters in order to try to win them and score points. Where this one differs is that, well, first off, most lane battlers are typically 2 players only. There's, some that modify the rules a little bit to add more and change it up a little bit. This is a 1 to 4 player game. which already breaks the mold for most typical lane battlers that I've come across. Again, being typically 2 players, this plays 1 to 4, and most people have stated it's actually better at like 3 players is the best player count. Because again, these factions are all asymmetric, so 3 players will give you the best mix of like seeing how the different factions will interact with one another, but there'll still be like that one gap there, so you don't have all 4 at once. You can mix and match a bit more and have it switch up a bit. Now, the new expansion fixes that anyways, because there's going to be 2 more factions in there, so playing at 4 players will be just fine again. But the thing about this game is that the lane battling is only like a third of the game. There is a lot of other things around it, surrounding the periphery, that is like the main part of the experience, and then everything else you're doing is kind of enhancing that part of it. Because during the lane battling, as you're winning these battles, you're scoring influence instead of victory points. I'm so glad that they switched up a little bit on that. You're gaining influence to try to take control over the kingdom, and the more arenas that you win, the more points you're going to score. But there's also extra benefits that you could win by getting each of those locations, by winning those spots. You know, like being able to recover cards to your hand, recover the troops that you can send out. There's a spot that'll just give you an extra point. There's a spot that'll unlock an extra ability on your player board that you can use. All sorts of cool stuff. That's just on the middle section of the board where all of this lane battling is happening. Before that, you have 2 different steps. One of them is, well, determining the turn order is like the big thing. There's only really one thing before that, and that is getting these kingdom cards, which are special abilities that players can get, that are just completely unique from the faction stuff, and they're either going to be like one-off abilities or passive things, like when you do this will happen. And you're actually going to be bidding on these kingdom cards. So each player during this phase can put a card into the mix to try to claim one of these kingdom cards. Excuse me, sorry about that. To claim one of these kingdom cards, but so whoever puts in the highest value card, of course, is going to get the first pick at these. Everyone's going to have a chance to get a kingdom card. They just might not always get the one that they want. If there's one out there that you really, really want, obviously you're probably going to want a higher value card in there to grab it, because after you take a kingdom card, you do refresh the market, so everyone will get an equal number of choices. But you'll take that kingdom card onto your player board, and then you'll put that card that you bid behind your player board as like a protector for that card. Because later on in future rounds, when you're in this kingdom card phase, players can put out a higher value card than what you have protecting the kingdom card on your board to steal that from you. So you're losing a card and they're gaining it, but if you put a higher value card there, obviously it's going to be a lot more protected. But then that's one less higher value card that you have to use during the lane battling, so it produces this interesting dilemma already of how much is this card going to help me versus how much am I losing by putting this card out here to bid for and protect this. Now, alternately, players can choose to just not take a kingdom card and grab their bid card back to their hand, especially if they're like last in line and they end up not liking any of the choices that are available to them. I'm pretty sure anyways. I haven't actually played this, but I've been doing a ton of research, and from what I remember, you get to recall that card back to your hand if you don't end up drafting anything. So after you get your kingdom cards, then you actually go into the lane battling phase. Everyone puts their cards face down in each theater. But it's not just resolved one at a time. Well, it is resolved one at a time, but not like in normal order. It's not just top to bottom. There is actually an order that is determined by a player. There's these 1, 2, and 3 tokens. And I believe that's determined by whoever is labeled as the first player. It's either the first or the last player. I'd have to go look up the rule book. I'm sorry. It's been a little while. I just know that I'm really excited about this game, but yeah, one of the players gets to decide in what order the arenas are determined, because there are effects on cards that will affect other theaters around them. Like if I have a card in the middle, sometimes that card can have an effect that's like, okay, move it up to this theater to boost it, or, you know, whatever. So you can having the order determined a certain way could actually define how the rest of them play out. So if I have the first theater, I know I'm going to lose it, but I have a card there that says it'll move to another theater to boost the card I have there, then I want to have that one go off first so that my card can be there in time for that other theater to have its battle resolve, and then I can try to win that one a little bit more. Again, on top of playing the cards, there's other things you're doing. You're putting out your leader pawn, which is going to allow you to get the extra bonuses. So at base, if you win a region, you'll gain the influence of that spot, but if you have your leader pawn there as well, you'll get the bonus effect in that theater. So wherever you put that is a pretty good indicators to players where you're trying to win, but you could also be using it as a total bluff. There's a lot of just trickery in this game, and that's like part of the beauty of it, is that there's a lot more open information that can be used to trick other information. Again, like putting a leader pawn out to try and bluff that, hey, I'm going to this region and I'm going to be putting a lot of force here, so then maybe players will avoid it, or they'll go really hard on sending their own stuff there and wasting the resources on that while you're in another theater piddle farting around, not really putting in any work but still getting the rewards out of it. So very unique in that aspect. On top of the leader pawns, there's also, I don't remember what the other pieces are called, but they're just more tokens as well that you could put into regions that'll add strength to that theater for you. So for each one that you put out, it'll be an extra 1 strength. But they also cost resources to get them back, like they're one-time use, and then you have to produce them again, and it can get fairly costly. So that is one thing to be aware of as part of that. After that phase, you go through an autumn step where you'll have cards with autumn effects resolved, because you might not be playing a card necessarily to win a theater, but to get its autumn effect. There's other stuff going on there. There's a whole court system going on. Definitely go watch like a how to play video, because I am certainly missing a lot of details. It's a very big game and there's a lot going on to it. And surprisingly enough, it's actually really renowned for its solo mode, which is something I'm very excited for. It's got a very robust and fun to play against Automa, and I've seen several videos of gameplay on it as well, and it looks very intriguing. So for that and the multiplayer experience, I think this game is just going to be stunning. It also just won an award, I think the Geek Awards, for best art and presentation, and holy does it land on that mark. It has some gorgeous art, beautiful illustrations, and I believe it was designed and drawn by the same person, which is just crazy. This whole game is definitely just a passion project by this guy, and it came out fantastically. Now, I've been ranting about Old King's Crown this whole time, and of course there's been a second game behind this waiting in the wings this whole time, and that is Annulet. This is actually a game based in the Old King's Crown universe, but is completely different. It's kind of like what was it, Gwent in the Witcher universe? It's kind of similar to that. Like, this is a game that characters in this world play, and now we have the chance in real life to play it. So this is again a brand new standalone 1-4. I'm reading off of the page right now. A brand new standalone 1-4 player game set within the world of the Old King's Crown. The game itself, you're going to be drafting lands, characters, and powerful amulets to build your kingdom, all the while storied tale cards change the very way the table plays. So there's going to be cards that come out that will change the rules of the game every now and then. Oh, never mind. No, they don't come out of the deck. That's right. You choose them at the start of the game or get them randomly. That will change how the game goes, but basically it's a deck of cards with 4 suits, like 3 main ones and then a kind of a wild suit, if I remember right. And basically you're trying to match up cards, whether it be suits or numbers or both, to score points, but you can mess with your opponent's board and do like some crazy stuff. It's a very interesting looking card game, and I'm definitely going to struggle to explain off rip, but I definitely recommend checking it out. It's a very intense, like smaller box card game that has a lot, like it's got a big competitive edge to it. It's definitely one of those mastery type games, like you want to play it quite a bit to really get a grip on it and really be good at it. But it's so unique in what it offers as a card game, especially for being something that's inside of another universe, that the designers said, you know what, we're gonna make this a game too. And I remember them talking in one of the early updates of the Old King's Crown that after work, they would just take this to the pub, and their studio, from what I recall, is actually right next door to the same group that did Deep Regrets. I can't remember them off the top of my head, and I'm sorry, but they're like right next to each other. And so after work, they would go to the pub and they would bring this game, ultimately for playtesting, but they ended up just getting so into it. And looking at it, you've got stones, you've got coins, and ultimately, again, you're just trying to fight for points in this clever card puzzle, but one that can be interrupted by your opponents at just about any time. And it looks very unique and very interesting. Again, I did back this as well, but it won't be showing up until next year. I actually don't remember roughly when it's estimated. Let me double check here and see if I can't find an estimated time. I know it's like mid next year. Okay, quarter to 2027 is what it's estimating right now for everything. So that's where I'll get, me personally and anyone else that backed it, I will get Amulet and also the Crowns or Songs of Home expansion. And I believe I also got the other expansion for Old King's Crown too, the one that's already out. So I'm going to have everything Old King's Crown come quarter two next year, but as of like the next few weeks, I should be getting the base game of Old King's Crown, and I'm very excited for it. I've never personally been a fan of lane battlers, but the way that this game implements everything so seamlessly and so thoughtfully is incredible, and I am absolutely enamored by it. And I very, very much look forward to playing it. I definitely will end up doing a review on it, but for a good while, I'm just going to spend time enjoying it and putting a lot of love into it, because that is a game that I plan to play for years. Essentially, Old King's Crown is going to be like my route, especially if they keep adding in factions to it. Like, it's one of those games that you almost just have a dedicated group to, so that you can grow better and more familiar with the game as time goes on. And eventually it's like actually a really, really good tight back and forth. You can switch off factions at any point and be able to have really interesting games. And again, it's just one of those, you almost want a dedicated group for this, for playing multiplayer, because it's going to be so in-depth strategically, and that's where you're going to find a lot of the real meat and potatoes of a game like this. You're going to get all the flavor and that real deep experience of engaging it with the same people over and over again to really truly master it all the way through, rather than being a game you just bust out casually when you got like some friends over or whatever. This is something you want to have dedicated people for, because it's going to make it that much more exciting. Granted, introducing new people to it's never going to be a bad thing. I think it's going to be a great game as well for that, but it is on the heavier side, of course, so it's not gonna be like the first thing I introduce to someone new, I'll ease them into this. But eventually it is my goal to get people into this game so that hopefully I can have them for the long term and really do some wacky fun stuff with it. So I think that is good enough for the board game of the week section. Maybe I'll end up yapping about it more later on, because I do just love this game and I'm very excited for it. It does kind of tie a little bit into our subject today, which we will go ahead and cruise on into right now, which is, again, budgeting and saving money in the board game space. More specifically, knowing when to actually hit the purchase button on a game. Okay, so why talk about this, right? We're all board gamers, we're all hobbyists, we all just love having shiny new boxes on our shelf that we can sit there and look at and admire and really appreciate as time goes on. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of us really do have trouble kind of tapering our expectations and coming to grips with the reality that if we buy too many games, we're not going to be able to play them all. And this is a common thing I see with a lot of people, is that they will have a shelf of shame, i.e. being games that they've purchased but have not played, and sometimes not even pulled out of shrink. And this is not judgmental, and there are people that call it shelf of opportunity, which kudos to you. That's got to be amazing to have that feeling of opportunity every corner. But again, I'm not judging people that do this. I'm just trying to see if maybe we can help people to not fall into this. Or if it's just something you really like doing and you have no problem with it, then that's totally cool. Then, let that be your life. I'm not going to judge. But for those that maybe find themselves falling too deep into the habit of purchasing games when maybe they shouldn't be, myself included, maybe some of these points will kind of help you out and make you a little less likely to pull the trigger on that game that maybe you actually just don't quite need. And I have done a video on this in the past on a different channel, but I want to kind of elaborate a bit more on a lot of these points and actually bringing them out a little more thoughtfully than maybe I have in the past. Because I believe at the time I did like a 20-minute video on it, and I want to go on a little bit longer, a little more in depth on some of these. So first things first, make sure the game fits into your budget before you even consider purchasing the game. Take a look at your wallet, take a look at your bank accounts, and make sure that that is a game you can actually afford. If it's something that you're breaking the bank for, or having to put a little extra weight on yourself to get, maybe it's not worth getting. I would never recommend that anybody put themselves in a financial ruin over board games. So definitely make sure that it is something that is affordable to you. And this is like obviously a duh moment, but it is sometimes easy to get yourself so down into the well that you don't pay attention to the numbers anymore. And again, something I've done myself, unfortunately, that you say, I don't care, I'm just getting it. And sometimes you gotta stop yourself for a second and be like, is this actually feasible? So I'm not going to spend too much time on that because that's a pretty blatantly obvious one, but it is worth mentioning because sometimes it does get overlooked. Is, again, making sure that the game actually fits into your budget and it's something that's affordable and you're not skipping putting food on the table to get that game, first and foremost, especially with how expensive games can get nowadays. If you're putting like $600 into an all-in pledge and that's going to put you short on your rent payment, don't do that pledge. Just straight up do not do that pledge. That is as simple as that. These games will most likely be around, and if it's a game that's not good enough to stick around after like an initial crowdfunding or whatever, then it probably wasn't really worth owning anyways. Like if it is a once in a lifetime thing for a game, more often than not that means that the game was just not worth having and you were probably better off skipping it anyways. That's my personal opinion. There are some niche cases in which that's not the truth and that game just only has a one-off run and the company just doesn't make enough good choices to keep floating, but the game is really good. That can happen, but I wouldn't risk it. And yeah, if money is tight, don't go too deep down the rabbit hole, especially getting expensive stuff like that. So that's tip number one. The big thing for me, this is like my biggest tip and the one that I stick to the most, and that really keeps me the most honest to myself on whether or not I should actually get a game. And that is doing research, doing tons and tons of research. First and foremost, if I got to remind myself that I got to go research for a game and I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Well, then right there, I already know I don't really want this game. I can't be bothered to go put in some effort and figure out what's up with this game before to make an informed decision before purchasing. If I can't even bring myself to do that part, then I'm like, okay, well, this game's clearly not for me. I'll just skip it and feelings aren't hurt. I'm just done with it. But the main bulk of this is looking up all sorts of different points of view on the game. You want reviews, obviously. Those are pretty good. Previews as well, especially for like crowdfunding stuff. Those are good to have, but they are not the best way to go about it because those are going to be typically biased opinions, whether it be that person is sponsored or that episode is being like produced by the company making the game, so their opinion is going to be influenced that way. If they're even having an opinion at all, sometimes they might just be showcasing the game briefly in the case of a preview. But in reviews, sometimes they could be sponsored videos, or it could even just be the person, each individual person is going to have their own bias. They're going to have different thoughts and ways that they think about games. So if you're doing reviews, if you know the person that you're watching and you know that they have very similar tastes to you, even still be ready to take that with a grain of salt, because reviews are not like the end all be all. Like I've had several games that I've gone and watched reviews on, and the people have said they're great, they're amazing, they're awesome, and then I get and play it and I'm like, it's okay at best, it just wasn't my type of game. Or I've had the opposite where they're like, oh, this game's mediocre, I wouldn't really recommend it to people, and then I get in and I'm like, I love this game, it's crazy. And it's like people that I thought I shared tastes with on those games or on those types of games, only to be proven completely wrong by the time I actually get to sit down at the table and play it. So reviews are not an end all be all. They can give you a little bit of an idea, a little bit of perspective. What I think is really the best in doing the research on a game is watching how to plays, and playthroughs. Those are going to be the ultimate best ways, because you're taking all of the opinion out of it and you're just learning about the game. How to plays are really the biggest ones for me. Well, actually, no, playthroughs I think are bigger, but how to plays are huge. You get all the little intricacies, you get the run through of the rules, so you already have a little bit of information in your mind on how it runs. Again, like what I was talking about with the old King's Crown stuff earlier, I've never played it, but I've watched how to plays and playthroughs on it, so I know a decent bit of the rules. Obviously not like in full detail as you heard, but I know enough of the rules to know that that is something I'm interested in, which is, again, where the how to plays and playthroughs come in. How to plays will teach you the basics of the rules, the core of the game, so you understand the basics of how it functions, and then playthroughs are where you really tie it all together and you see how everything interacts with one another and goes together, especially in games with player interaction. You want to know that how that interaction is going to work out and really see it and really be able to see it in action. Because sometimes how you read something in a rule book or you see it in how to play doesn't transition to actual gameplay the way you think it does. So seeing it play out is super, super beneficial. I definitely recommend doing those in tandem. That's why when I do videos on board games, I try to do all three. I'll do a review, a how to play, and a playthrough if I can help it. Now, granted, I'm mostly a solo gamer. I don't have anyone else working on this content with me, so I can only do playthroughs on solo games, or, well, games that have a solo mode. So it does change up a little bit of things, like for Layers that I just released here a couple weeks ago. That series of videos, I was only able to do the how to play and the review because I didn't have anyone else to do the playthrough with. But that's why I try to do all three videos, to give you guys as much information on a game as possible to really help you decide if that's one that you actually want to get. And it's something I kind of would appreciate more people doing, but obviously I understand it's really hard to fit into time, and not all these types of videos actually get the most views. So for people that this is their career or like their main source of income, I definitely get it not doing all three, but I really do recommend that all three types of videos get watched. Reviews are a good way to like get the initial impression on the game, get some basic thoughts on it and some emotions from someone. That'll kind of get you started. And then I definitely always recommend to do the how to plays and playthroughs. You can skip the reviews. Technically, they're just nice to add in that. It's like the mind, body, and soul thing. You need all three parts to really get the whole picture. And even then, like, you're still not going to have a full picture of the game until you have it in your hands and are playing it, or you can test it on like BGA or something if they have it up there. Always do research on a game absolutely thoroughly. And I'm not talking just from one source. Like, I will go to multiple sources. Like, if I see a no pun included video on a game, I'm going to go watch the shut up and sit down video on as well. And then I'm going to go find someone else just completely like under the radar that has no affiliation whatsoever to anyone, and I'm going to watch them as well. I'm going to get as full of a perspective as I can on the game. And it does multiple things. First off, if it's, as you're watching the videos, if you start being like, okay, I'm not really that interested in this game, then you can just back off and you're done with it. You don't have to worry about it. But if you feel that interest building, the more stuff that you go through, I find personally, the more I get excited for that game. Like, if it's one that's really going to keep my interest, I'm really going to start getting excited about that game the more and more I watch stuff on it. And I'm actually really bad about this because when I backed Andromeda's Edge just last year for the Genesis campaign, I backed everything for it. And I had to do so much research on that game. But the thing that ended up selling me on it was actually a playthrough on Tim Chuan's channel. I think I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I butchered that. But I was watching his playthrough with Bonds and Law, and like that was what sold me on the game. So much so that I have probably watched that video an amount of times that's in the double digits. Like, I've probably watched that video at least 10 times at this point because I'm so infatuated with that game, and that playthrough was so intriguing. I'm like, I cannot wait to have this game in my hands every time I watch that video. And the more I would repeatedly watch it, I would start actually memorizing things that they would say in the video. It was kind of funny. I'd like remember what their turns were and whatnot because I had watched it and listened to it. Like, I would even turn it on, and because I have YouTube Premium, I would just throw my phone in my pocket, put it in my earbud while I'm working, and just listen to the game because I already knew what was happening. But it was because that video brought me so much excitement for the game. It keeps the thrill of its arrival, if its impending arrival, at a high, and I absolutely love it. And that is, like, again, that's twofold on doing research, is it'll let you know if you actually like the game or not, and then once you determine you like the idea of the game enough, it just starts promoting and building excitement, which is absolutely fantastic. Not to tie too much into last week's podcast, but that is something that is definitely good. So as you're going through and doing your research, you should be determining something very, very important. And this is my second biggest tip, because this has deterred me away from so many game purchases. And that is being confident to your soul, in your bones, after doing your research, being confident that it could fit into your top 10 games of all time. If it even makes just that 11th spot, don't buy it. It's not worth it. If you don't think that game has the potential to be in your top 10 games of all time, boot it out of your life. You don't need it. And this is a very extreme take. Some people could probably expand this a little bit to be like top 15 or top 20. I personally myself stick to a hard line of top 10 games of all time. If I don't think it can make my top 10, I'm not buying it. And now, I have stuck to this pretty hard. The Old King's Crown is one of those, like, I could see that being number 2 or 3, honestly. Andromeda's Edge, I could absolutely see being in my number 1 spot of all time, dethroning Ostia, at least until I get Sweetlands, which is another game I did that with. I think Sweetlands has very good potential to be my number 1 game of all time, dethroning Ostia. And, I see so much competition between all these titles. Granted, obviously, I'm not going to know exactly where it sits on my top games of all time until I have it and until I play it. But from all the research that I've done, I can determine that these games are all likely to make my top 10 games of all time. And again, that is easier for someone like me to say because I only have about 150 game collection. I know there are people out there that have games in the several hundreds or even thousands of games. So it's a little bit harder for people like that to find those games that are just going to make their top 10 of all time. But honestly, I would kind of say that maybe those are the type of people that really need to stick to something like this anyways. Again, no offense. I'm not judging anyone. If you got a huge collection, kudos to you. I wish I could afford that. That would be amazing, to not have to limit myself. But at the same time, we also have to be a little bit realistic about what we can and can't afford and what is actually feasible to have for a collection. I also just don't have the space currently for that many games, so I do have to keep that in mind as well. So that's why I also take such a hardline stance on these are the criteria this game has to meet in order for me to even consider hitting that purchase button or swiping my card at the store. I will not go and just, purchase or like impulse buy a game anymore. I have to stop myself and slow myself down and think realistically about this stuff. And especially if I'm in the store, I'm like, okay, I can't pull a trigger right now. I need to go online and find information about this game. Even when I'm going out of town and traveling, I will have this same determination as well. Like last year, I went on a trip just 2 hours out of my town, but there's a store in that town that we went to that is an actual game store that also does toys and stuff, but it has a good, decent selection of board games. And before going, I already knew what game I wanted, and I even called in advance, said, hey, can you set this game aside for me so that I can pick it up when I come there? Because this is the only game that I want to get while I'm there. And that game was Thunder Road Vendetta. And actually, ironically, I found that game through Shut Up and Sit Down, and then I went and did more research on it, and I was like, this is, even though I'm a solo gamer, this is a must-have game for me, because the times that I do get to play multiplayer, this looks like such an amazing game. And now maybe I could have done a little extra research, because I did end up getting the Chrome edition, which maybe I didn't quite need all of that, but at the same time, I'm not too mad about having that, because I have played with a few of the things out of that Chrome edition, and I've been thoroughly enjoying all of the plays I've gotten of that game. And now it's not quite top 10 anymore, but going in, that was definitely a top 10 game because of how fun and addicting it is when you actually get to play it multiplayer. And I love Thunder Road Vendetta. It's still in my top 20 of all time, and hopefully it won't leave for quite a while, because I really do truly love that game, and I would hate to ever see it drop out of the top 20. But then again, there might be enough games, especially solo, that could dethrone it, that we'll see on it. But Again, being a game that could make top 10 of all time is a very huge thing to consider. I'm trying to think about what other games I have coming up here. Actually, I have a whole list. Let me go ahead and pull it up and I'll see. So there are times that I can make exceptions, like if it's a small enough game, I can make an exception. Like Button Shy. That one, Button Shy games, I kind of fit into their own category because they're just so different than most board games, and they're just like wallet card games. Now, transitioning the boxes instead of wallets, unfortunately, but they're still just really nice travel games, so they fit a different niche than most board games for me. So I do kind of consider those a little bit different, especially when it comes to the budget, because they're only like $15 a piece or something like that. They're not too crazy expensive for the most part, so I do kind of put those in their league. And there are games that I will make slightly small exceptions for. Like in the next couple of days, I should be getting my Dragon's Gift pledge, which is going to contain several solo Button Shy games that I just like to have on me for traveling, because I can't realistically always take these bigger games with me and be able to play them wherever. So I do like having some travel size games, but they're not going to fit into my top 10 all time games, because if I have the choice between playing a Button Shy game and something like Thunder Road or Ostia or Sweetlands, I'm always going to pick one of those bigger games over a Button Shy game. If I have the option and like there's no barriers whatsoever, I'm always going to pick the bigger game. So again, I do make exceptions for stuff like that, but other things I have coming, Gone to Gaia is one I definitely think will be in my top 10 of all time. Songs of Silverant, same thing. These are big campaign games that I really think are going to bring about a bunch of excitement, and Gone to Gaia is very big for me right now as a Destiny player. For those that aren't aware, Destiny is a video game created by Bungie, the same company that did Halo, and yeah, I'm going through a bit of issues with that right now given the current state of the game, but not to dive into too much of that. Gone to Gaia is going to be like a substitute for Destiny once I get that, and that is going to be a huge factor in how much I love that game, aside from it just looking like an amazing game. So I'm really thrilled about that one, but that is another one I absolutely think will make my top 10 of all time, and I'm super excited for that one. So again, my second biggest point on this list is being confident that game could fit into your top however many of all-time games. I wouldn't personally go over 20 as a barometer, just in case, because then you start getting into like, I think I'll like it enough, and it's kind of like, well, maybe that's not right. So I think if you're going to expand on that barrier of top 10, I would max it out at top 20 of all time. I wouldn't personally go any higher than that. If it would be like your number 20 on game, I think that's the point where you say, nope, that's not worth my money and not worth my time. I'm not going to worry about it. The next step here in this equation that I think is also quite important, but not as much as the last two, is how often is it likely to be played? And this is something I have had so many problems with and dilemmas with myself when I'm looking at a game, whether it be a campaign or in store. I'm looking at it and I'm like, this game excites me. It's amazing. It looks like so much fun. I've done all my research on it. Fits into my budget. This would easily make my top 10 games of all time. And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, it's 3 to 5 players. And then I think about my typical situations. Most often I'm playing it 1 to 2. And the times that I get 3 players is on average once a month. And even then we're constantly switching out what games we play that once a month. So if I get a game like that, it's like, well, yeah, I would absolutely love to play this game, but it's minimum 3 players. I only get to do that once a month, and realistically it's going to be like maybe every other month I'll get to play this game. That doesn't seem worthwhile enough for me for this type of game that I really want to play and dive into. There's even sometimes where it's like a 1 to 6 player game. Like I'll throw out a game that I have actually as an example, and that's Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, is a 1 to 6 player game. I would virtually, at this point in my gaming time, previously in a review on a different channel, I've stated that the 1 and 2 player modes are awesome and still plenty of fun. And I think they're okay in retrospect, like they're decent, but I wouldn't recommend it to someone who averages that player count. I would say it's a minimum 3 player game. To really have a good time with it, you need at least 3 players. And I would even say 4 or 5 is like that good sweet spot where it actually starts getting really interesting, but not too crazy. And to be able to do that on average for a lot of people is not super realistic. And for me, I am one of those people. Now, do I regret having Libertalia? No, not that I've already spent the money on it. If I could go back, maybe I would say, well, let's think about this. Are we actually going to be playing this a lot often? Because it's been a little while since I've played it. Let me go pull up the last time that I've played this game, because I can't remember if it's even been in the last year, to be honest. It's been a good while since I've played Libertalia, because now I'm at the point where I do really only like to play it if I'm going to be doing it at 3 or more players. The last time I played it, okay, never mind, it was November 22nd last year. So it hasn't been that long, I guess, but it feels like it's been that long because I don't play it all that often. Now, I do like it for the times that it comes up. I feel like it's a pretty decent game to introduce to new players, so it's a bit nicer for that aspect as well. But in general, again, it doesn't really meet the criteria of I'm not playing it as often as I would want to. Now, if it's like a heavy game, you don't really expect to play it all that often. Like, you go in knowing that you're not going to play it all that often and that's okay to you, then sure, that's totally fine. Like something like Blood on the Clock Tower. You know, there's always somebody that has it, but they're not always able to play it because you need so many people for that. That's like a convention game, and not everybody has the funds and the means to go to a convention all the time. So, you know, sometimes people really just like having a game like that because those moments that it comes up and it's perfect for, they're like, yes, I need to have it for that. For me, though, something like Libertalia, again, going back to that example, is I have enough games that fill that player space, that player count, that I don't necessarily think I needed Libertalia to fill that. Now, at the time, I was a bit earlier on, again, I will say that much, but now at this stage in time, I have enough games that fill that spot that I didn't necessarily need that. I already have games that cover it. So realistically, that game was not going to get played as often as I would want it to. And that's the big thing to play, or the big thing to consider, is that not necessarily just how often is it going to get played, but how often will it be played to the amount of times that you want it to be played. Like, you got to be realistic about it. Like, I'm never in the situations where this game is going to come up, so maybe I really don't need it. It's just going to end up being a shelf queen and not going to serve me any purpose. So perhaps it's better to just go ahead and skip this game for now. And if I ever find myself at a different point in life later on, then maybe I can revisit the idea. But for now, it's not for me. And that kind of ties into this next topic as well, is does it fit well for your average player count? Not just does it have it, but does it play well? And again, I'll go back to Libertalia. It does have the 1 to 2 player counts, but it plays so differently than the rest of the game, and in a way that, you know, I don't mind it. They're not bad ways to play the game, but ultimately I would probably just rather play something else at that player count instead of playing Libertalia. So, like, to tie into both these points is, do you have games that already fit what you want this game to do? You definitely got to think about the context of the game, and do I have other games that will fill this? Don't, like, you know, skip past the theming, skip past a lot of the basic stuff. Just boil it down to, like, gameplay, player counts, like how you would want to play it, what type of experience that game is supposed to deliver, and debate with yourself, like, do I have other games that are going to fill this niche? And again, for the example of Libertalia, I can probably go through my games right now and find several other games. I'm like, well, I would rather play this in that situation. Like, just scrolling down a little bit, Wonderland's War, Thunder Road Vendetta, at those higher player counts, I would rather play either of those games just easily. Libertalia, again, a fantastic game, don't get me wrong. If I had the choice between those 3 games, it would be one of the other 2, not Libertalia. Again, still at the higher player count. Scythe, I would have a lot of fun playing Scythe at a higher player count. Haven't really gotten to do that yet. Let's see. I have several other games that I can fill this spot with. Even like on the lighter end, I could do stuff like, here we go. Here to Slay, maybe not. That was a game I used to do that with. But there are so many other games that I'm like, I have enough stuff to fill this spot that I think would be more interesting, engaging, and make me more fulfilled as a gamer than having this one. So again, fitting your average player count, knowing your group, or if you're playing by yourself, knowing yourself, is that game going to fit that spot and actually be something that gets pulled out on those game nights or those moments where you've got free time and you're playing solo at home? are these games going to fill that spot and do it well? Again, there's so many games nowadays, especially for solo gamers, where these companies will stick a one player label on the box and just sloppily throw in a solo player mode and call it a day, just to have that on the box to produce more sales. There are always the games that actually do put in the effort, and that's where the research comes in, especially like for solo gamers. I can't recommend the research enough because it's so big to keep an eye out for games that say they are single player, and then you look at it and you're like, okay, this game had no single players actually in mind, and it was just kind of one that was slapped in there as a way to make extra sales, which is, you know, it's the natural course of things. Companies are gonna do this. They need to keep up with sales and whatnot to keep themselves going. I could definitely understand it, but it's very frustrating for solo players to be really excited about a game, get in, and then realize the solo mode was nothing like what they expected out of the game, and then it just becomes very disheartening and disappointing. That's why a lot of my favorite games have really good solo modes. Like Scythe is in my top 5 games, and a lot of people might argue that it's not the best solo mode, but I quite enjoy it, especially with the app, so I can run multiple automas at once if I'm feeling brave enough. But even just doing one-on-one against another automa is quite fun because it allows me to practice and really figure out how to optimize my engine and do all sorts of wacky stuff. I've been really enjoying that as a solo player. I don't get to play Scythe multiplayer a whole lot. I do have people that enjoy playing it multiplayer, so I play it at the 3-player count semi-frequently. But then Ostia is another one. I primarily play that game at solo because I think the solo mode is fantastic. It's just racing against the clock to optimize your player board as much as possible and get as much done before you run out of turns. And it really keeps the game limited in scope, but also like just so engaging as you're trying to figure out how to maximize every little thing and profit as much as you can at every turn. And to me, those are like some of the best solo games, are ones that just force you into the situation and say, solve this puzzle to the best of your ability in this amount of time. And that's the whole solo mode. There's also really good solo modes that have automas, again, like Old King's Crown, or a lot of Stonemaier games like Scythe or Wormspan. You know, automas can be really good as well if well designed and thought out, but there are a lot of times where they can just be kind of thrown in there and say, oh, this guy does this action, it does all this stuff, and you just feel so behind, and you're like, well, I didn't really feel like I did anything that game because this automa just got to do everything. And, you know, it's like there's some earlier Stonemaier games that maybe I kind of feel that way with, like Viticulture. I don't really care for that automa or just that solo mode in general. But then as Stonemaier progressed, their automas got way better. Apiary is fantastic. Wormspan is amazing. I love those automas. But for some reason, that Viticulture one just left such a bad taste in my mouth. And there's plenty of games out there that'll stick that solo player label on the games just to make the extra sales. I'm rambling on a whole different topic right now, and I'm sorry about that. That's how this stuff goes. You know, you get into a subject and then you find yourself going off on tangents quite a bit. But yes, again, the main point I was trying to drive home there is, does it fit your average player count, and does it do it well? Not just does it do it. Okay. And the last thought I want to leave you all on, and this is like the last step in any part of this before you click that purchase button, is I would even just use this for general purchasing advice. Take time to let it stew in your mind and make sure it's not just FOMO. You know, it's not like if you're at a store and you see a shiny game, make sure that it's not just that initial first glance that caught your eye, and be sure that it is something that you're actually going to be into. Like, take all of these steps that I've brought before, go through all of them, and then just give it a few days. Just cut all that stuff off cold turkey. Give it a few days, let it stew, just let it rumble onto the back of your brain, and it'll make that final decision so much easier. Of course, if you're stripped on time, I definitely understand that can be tough situations, but try to at least give it some amount of time to stew in your mind. Try not to like put it on the forefront and be actively thinking about it. Just let it sit in the back of your mind and see what happens. If you find it constantly popping up, to me, that's a big sign that I'm like, I'm obsessed with this game. I really am obsessed with this game. I can't stop thinking about it, even when I'm trying actively to think about something else. Yeah, like even if I'm turning on music or other podcasts or what have you in the background to try to distract me and stop thinking about it, I will still find myself muting those things in my head and just thinking about the game. If it's something that I'm really, really excited about and truly interested in, it will keep coming back up. But if you give it that few days, you're not really thinking about it at all, then it's like, well, maybe that's not quite it. And this could be different for everybody. This could just be a my brain thing. Who knows? I'm not a psychologist by any means, but either way, taking time to let it stew in your mind is that process is going to be running in the back of your head, whether you're thinking about it or not. And then when you go to make that final decision, that's where you can be like, well, I've gone through all these things. Does it meet each of these criteria well enough that I can justify this purchase accordingly and not have it be something I'm going to regret later? And now, don't get me wrong. You can still go through all these steps, determine that everything is perfect about the game, have it show up, and then look at it and be like, well, I was wrong. This is not perfect, and I'm actually kind of disappointed by it. And that's okay. That will happen at times, and sometimes you just gotta resell or gift the game and move on if it's really not your liking and you don't want to take it up your shelf space. Sometimes that's the way it goes, and it was just an unlucky circumstance. But I find that most often after I have been following this kind of regiment with myself with a new game, it has saved me a lot of money, a lot more than I've been spending, which is kind of impressive. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but even like recently, the Leviathan Wilds campaign has been up here for the last like week or two, and that's for the newest expansion of the game, but of course includes reprints for all the other stuff. And I have been I've even literally created the pledge and submitted it, and then I've gone back a couple days later like, no, it doesn't fit enough of this criteria, so I cancel the pledge. And I'm like, if I really, really want it later, this is a game that will be in stock and I can just go get it later, and I don't have to buy into the FOMO of it all. I can skip on the fear of missing out, because I know that if this game is good enough, it will stay available on Allplay's website specifically for this game. It will stay available, and I'll be able to go pick it up at a later date and not have any problems. But right now, I've got too much other stuff going on that I absolutely am not missing out on, because I've done my research and all of it. I know how much I'm going to love everything else. And for some reason, Leviathan Wilds was just one that was not quite good enough for me to hit that trigger on. It did not quite make that top 10. I think it was probably like a number 11 or 12 for me, to be honest. And I'm like, okay, it's not there. It's not quite what I need right now. I have enough other stuff going on. I'll go ahead and wait on this one. And it was a big moment of self-control, because like I said, I created that pledge like a couple of times and submitted them, and then I had to go back and cancel them both times. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so tough. And then I went through my list again, and I'm like, okay, this is not the right time for this game. I'm getting stuck on the FOMO. I'm wanting to get it a few bucks cheaper. I can just wait until a time where it's more reasonable for me to get this, and then decide at that point if it's actually worth it for me still. And I think sleeping on it has been one of the biggest things to let me come to acceptance of the fact that I don't need it right now, and I'm perfectly okay with where I'm at not having that game. So I think that is actually going to cover that topic for today. So let's go ahead and get in some closing thoughts. What are some games that you guys have purchased that you just could not live without? Like, you did say a few of these steps maybe, and you got to that game and you're like, yes, I need to have it. What are some games like that you've had? Because I've definitely had several that I'm just like, I didn't even really need to question a lot of these. I did the steps, but I like instantly as I got to each step, I'm like, yes, and it was perfect. Are there any games like that for you? But also an extra question, what kind of regiments do you guys have to potentially avoid buying games if you can help it? Or like, what steps do you follow before purchasing, if you have any? I would very much love to know. But again, that's kind of it for that main topic today. Again, a lot of us can get really stuck into the trap of buying games based on initial thoughts because we're really interested in the basic idea of it, but a lot of the time you need to scratch a bit beyond that surface layer to get the full scope of what you're actually investing in. It's not just the art or the idea of what you think the game will be. You need to look at what the game will actually be and then find out from there if that is something that you would really want. And there's plenty of times I'm seeing games with like cool elements to it that I'm like, oh, that would be awesome to have. And then I'm looking at the rest of the game. I got to look at it as a whole and be like, well, I like this one element of it, but I don't think I really care for everything else around it. And that is probably not good enough of a reason to get a game. So I had to skip out on those. Like Don't Starve was kind of one of those. I didn't really have any sort of feelings towards the original Don't Starve, like the video games and all that. I never had any sort of reaction or caring to any of those. But when it came to the board game, I was kind of interested because it had that whole recipe book to be able to craft items and whatnot. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. And I'm sitting there looking at the rest of the game. I'm watching playthroughs and stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is a really dry game, though. Like, there's not a whole lot going on here. And I think a lot of people kind of bought into that game because of the title. I'm not going to say that too much because I can see people enjoying the game for what it was. But I've already kind of got games that do similar stuff to it. And I'm like, yeah, to me, this doesn't really seem exciting enough of a game to go ahead and back the whole thing just because I'm excited about this recipe book. I'm like, at that point, I can just make a game that has a recipe book in it or something like that. There's other ways around it. You can find other games that have stuff like that too, I'm sure. And I was just like, yeah, that's not really a good enough thing to back a game for. And of course, all of the steps that I presented can be applied to either crowdfunding a game or purchasing a game like in person or just online at a retailer. And definitely don't let your mind fall into the trap of a clock. If there's a clock on something and you're running out of time and you haven't finished fully making your educated decision, just let it go. Don't do the impulse buy. Like if you're on something and it's like, oh, sale for 4 hours or like 3 copies of this left selling fast, if you've got that and then you run out of time before you've made your decision, then just let it go. It's not worth it. Maybe someone else will get some joy out of that game, but sometimes you just have to accept that you can't get every game that you want, and sometimes it's not always reasonable to get every game that you want. So missing out on an opportunity, yeah, it'll suck, but sometimes you just gotta accept it and move on and enjoy the games that you do have. I do have to remind myself that a lot too. It's not always about the new games. Sometimes you gotta just keep enjoying the ones that you have, and that is really something I try to mindfully practice as well. As yes, I'm very excited for these new games, but I have so many here already that I also really love and would love to just enjoy my time with. And sometimes you got to slow down and be like, hey, I've got a great collection already. I can just keep enjoying what I got here. And, sometimes that is just enough. Like, again, with Leviathan Wilds, I'm like, yeah, that would be a good game to have. But at the same time, I have a really good collection right now. So I think I'm okay. And that is something that we can be all right with ourselves, is realizing, hey, our collection's doing just fine. We don't need to rapidly expand. This is also a marathon, not a sprint. You don't need to rush into filling out your collection right away. Sometimes it is good to space out those purchases and really curate that perfect collection for yourself. Like right now, I'm in the process of, and this will probably be a whole separate discussion later on. I'm in the process of trying to cull some games out of my collection, and I've got a whole process for that as well. To make space for the games that I really, really want to have, rather than holding on and harboring games that I maybe don't care for as much just because I paid for them. Like, there's not any reason to just hold on to a game for that. So I am working on shortening my collection, as well as just like try to perfectly curate exactly what I have on my shelves. Because I think that develops me more as a gamer, as well as knowing exactly what my needs are and what type of games I actually enjoy playing and having around. And it also kind of gives me a little bit of progress in life, to see where I started versus where I am now and the types of stuff that I'm enjoying. Like, I got into the hobby pretty much only being about cozy games, like cozy Euro games, stuff like Maple Valley, Creature Comforts, Honey Buzz, Fox Experiment. I pretty much started on games like that, and then I started getting more into the heavier games or the more player interaction based games, and I started realizing that my limited view as a board gamer was not all there was. And I started finding that I really enjoyed some of those other games. Again, some of my favorite games are heavier games or games with some player interaction in them. Obviously, I still don't like too much player interaction, but enough goes a long way. And being able to know what games to buy and when to purchase a game has been a big part of my journey as a gamer, to realize these are actually the types of games that I enjoy, and I don't need to just buy everything that looks fresh, new, and shiny because it is fresh, new, and shiny. You know, sometimes that's not the reason to get a game. And this has all been a very big journey for myself. Ever since I started getting into board games, it's been very tough to keep myself on the straight and narrow, to not over purchase and buy games that I don't need. I've definitely made plenty of purchasing mistakes, and it was all a big learning curve. There was a lot of stuff I did wrong that maybe I wish I could take back, but at the same time, if I didn't, I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I know today. So with that being said, that is all I got for you today for this episode of How Board Symposium. Hopefully you all enjoyed it enough. If you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. If you're listening to this anywhere else you get your podcast, just knowing that you're around and getting your support is great. I have no plans to make this, a sort of job anytime soon. This is purely just someone who enjoys ranting about board games and loves this hobby for what it is and wants to share their opinions. So any feedback anyone has is fantastic. Regardless, I just love having you all here supporting me. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'll talk to you next time here on the How Board Symposium. Peace out.